Good? So what? Showtime. Wiaan, are you nervous?
No, I'm not nervous at all.
You haven't got a third camera on you. Only two right now. Have you podcasted before?
Never.
So I'm popping your cherry.
Yes.
Here we go. I like it. We're in a museum right now I'm not going to say where we are because obviously it's sensitivities to what we're doing here and whatnot. But this museum is essentially a reflection of this place, right? And I'm looking here, just like in front of me, the migratory springboks of South Africa, and there's pictures on the wall of, what do you call them? Trek Springbok.
Yeah, track Springbok. And that's the old name when there were no fences. When the Springbok and actually all the antelopes, the Springbok and hartebeest especially, they moved from the Kalahari, then in a circle through the Karoo, and ended up back there again following the rains. So normally when the first rains were coming in the west, they will go and follow the rains and the green grass. And the last one that was recorded in 1896, that's the pictures that you see.
Came through this place.
That pictures was taken here, and they measured the size of the track every year in hours horse ride. And that was 5 days with a horse was the length, and 18 hours was the width of the track with all the animals. And they even...
How many Springbok do they think were in something like that?
They actually do have the numbers that they guesstimate that they had, but they were even recording a hyena, leopard, a lot of animals that was recorded. They will follow because that was where the food were.
Jeez.
And it's amazing how quickly that scenario changed with the domestication of land. And when we as farmers came in and first believed that sheep and cattle is the only way, and luckily we've turned it around again, actually also in a very short period. And I think if we look at numbers wise, then there's more animals now than in 1896. A pity that there's fences, but that's the model in South Africa, and that's the only reason why we could do that.
Yeah, I've never actually thought about that. Yeah. Would you think that between everybody who has Springbok in this part of the world?
No, definitely.
How many Springbok do we think we got? Millions?
No, I would say I would say we can say millions. It's really, there's really a lot of Springbok, Gemsbok. There's so much. If you just look at animals that's not supposed to be a lot, like sable roan, it's many. If you look at the disease-free buffalo in the Matlabas area, there's over 50,000. That's a huge number. But because they are isolated on private properties, you don't get that feeling of this herds of thousands that you might see in Mozambique or up in Africa.
And you're a private landowner.
Yes.
Here in South Africa, and you own the wildlife. It's yours.
That's the way the law states now. You buy the animals as long as you have adequate enclosure certificate. Then the animals belong to you, and that's why we protect them. That's why we fence them, because you bought them, you paid them. You live from their progeny. It is a commercial model with a lot of positive outcomes, of which conservation is one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And to the idea of conservation, and I'll throw my first jab at you from a question perspective. Somebody will say to you, you own rhino, but you're not allowed to kill them. They're endangered.
That's quite a principle that I don't want to say what it's doing inside me, because for someone else that's got no stake in the game, haven't risked anything, firstly to have an opinion on what you must do, what's yours, for me it's not acceptable, but it is happening and we must deal with it. So yes, it's fine for you to say that, but I'm not convinced that you are right.
Are rhinos endangered?
I think black rhinos definitely. White rhino is becoming endangered. I think white rhinos
But we're seeing more and more. You're seeing more white rhino, more black rhino on private land holdings.
Yeah. But I think we must see there was a shift in numbers or in location where you find the rhinos. When I started with my first rhino bull in 2008, I had one bull.
Why did you buy that bull?
just because I just wanted to have a rhino. I had all the other species, and I just wanted, and this rhino was the last one left from a poaching incident next to Sun City, or next to Pilanesberg. And I bought this bull.
How much did you pay?
I paid then 150,000 rand for this bull. And I had this bull, he even had a name. And an amazing client of mine, Dan Burks from the United States, we were sitting on one of the hills back at Wintershoek. And I told him, and I said, Dan, if you hunt that bull, I can buy 2 pregnant heifers. And at that moment, he said, I'll do that, but promise me you will buy 2 pregnant heifers. And I called Nature Conservation then. They issued the permit the next morning. We hunted that rhino, and I bought my first 2 pregnant females, and they both calved. And that's how I started.
How much were the females?
The females were then 300,000 each. So at that moment, that was the good old days, females were worth more than males. Because we didn't devalue rhinos like we do now with absolute stupid policies, regulations and laws that people that want to implement them doesn't understand the consequences. I don't think anyone means bad by doing that, but they don't understand the consequences, because within an office and the space of an office, you can't make a decision if you haven't been out in the veld with the animals, know how they breed, how they live, how they behave, and what they need to survive.
And I would say, arguably more importantly, on top of that, is the financial stake privately that you have in that. Because the risk is on you.
You know, it's something that no one will understand, because most people, if they look at the full moon coming up, it's an amazing sight. Since I had rhinos, it's a scary sight, because we know that's a high risk period. So it does change your view on a lot of amazing things. It just changes your view, how you think about your staff going out at night. But the worst is that it's actually not affordable. When I started with rhino, it wasn't even in my mindset that I would have to protect them, and that I have to pay people to look after them with guns, not sleeping. And then 10 years after I started, I had my first incident.
When was that?
2018.
Okay.
And I lost 5 rhinos. Obviously, then we realized it's getting serious.
Up until that point, what had you been doing? Because obviously before 2018, you were seeing the scourge of rhino poaching hitting Kruger National Park and whatnot. So what were you thinking here?
You know, actually what happened for me, I always wanted to have a lot of rhino. You know, you can color it in any way you want to say I wanted to contribute to the conservation of rhino. I just love rhino since I started to work with it the first time. And what I did then is I was indirectly, the poaching made me more involved without trying to save the rhinos or do anti-poaching or start a security company or whatever. But I was fortunate to have space and the desire to have rhino. And it's the same model till today, where when someone get poached out, and they don't know what to do with their last 6, 8 rhinos, I will go on my cost, catch them, bring them here, and we look after them. Obviously then, there was the possibility that we could trade one day, and I thought by doing that, and I get 50% of the progeny for my input and everything, that is a good business model. But it also another time feed my hunger to have a lot of rhino. So that was a way to get there. But that hope faded away the last couple of years because of all these policies and legislation, and people not understanding what's going on in the rhino world, having an opinion and driving policies and legislation.
So tell me the first basic thing around rhino conservation that would blow people's minds.
I think the first basic is that in any rhino population we have too many males, and how do we manage them? I think because the reason why I say that, it ends up to the unacceptable practice of this only way to generate money is now through the XX males by hunting. I think
what would be the alternative?
There is actually no alternative except if we can get more land to move the animals to. But we must remember that rhino is one of the few animals in the world that have the ability to save himself. He's producing something where there's a huge market for. That is not a drug. It's not alcohol. It's no cigarette. It's nothing. And it regrows. And there's a value to it. And if we allow the rhino to save himself by letting controlled legal trade going, I think we will see a huge change.
Wouldn't you be worried that somebody would then, this is the worry that people have with the legalization of the horn trade, one of the worries, is that, and you're a businessman, right, that somebody would go, oh, now I get to farm rhinos, like him, right? Like essentially you become a rhino farmer. And they say that is not what we should be doing.
Yes, that's an argument, and I've sat around tables for many years trying to work something out that can work for everything. If you look at John Hume was a very direct person, but at the end of the day, there's way more rhinos where John Hume started than when he left. So if we want to measure John Hume's influence and success on his dream or his how do you say it? Not his dream, but his viewpoint to make
more rhinos,
legal horn trade possible. If we judge him on that and not on the amount of rhino that he bred and left behind, I think we're missing the point. So I think we get lost a little bit. John Hume started with hundreds of rhino, he left thousands. When he left, he had more babies born on his farm than in Kruger. Are we holding our national parks and Kruger responsible for that? No, we don't. We talk about John Hume because he was thinking differently and thought that legal trade is a good thing. And I think that is missing the point, because let's measure people on their results. And if they act within an acceptable way and they look after the animals, then the results is very important. What I'm saying is, I don't think anyone want an iconic species like rhino being misused, too domesticated, small areas, and not looked after. But our laws actually at this moment make space for that. And there's only a couple of things that you must do when you want to register a captive breeding operation. And there's, I think, 3 or 4 at this moment in South Africa. And I mean, you will visit one and see how amazing it is. It can be done. But I mean, that is that you must look after them. You must feed them when necessary, and you must give veterinary assistance where necessary, and they must have sufficient water. That's actually a very simple principle, and that doesn't mean that you can abuse the animals for your own benefit. People in the world have more and more problems with money or with business, but unfortunately that is what keeps the world going, and that is, if we take the business away, I don't think rhinos will survive. I don't think there is enough tourists that will come operation in the arid Karoo.
Yeah, so tell me, so we're obviously in the Karoo, Northern Cape. As we were driving in, we were talking about this in the vehicle. You know, this community that we're in, you said 1,500 to 2,000 rhino, right? About. Lots of different landowners all together, all breathing, stepping the same direction, all believing in the same mission. But of everybody, there's really only one ecotourism operation, right?
Yes.
Tswalu.
Yes.
I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is Tswalu, and I would assume they're not, is Tswalu, if they're just from the ecotourism bed nights perspective, is that paying for everything that's happening on Tswalu?
You know, a couple of years ago, I would have said no, but it took them, I would say, nearly 10 years to establish themselves as a top ecotourism destination.
They've done the brand work, right?
At very, very high-end prices and very specialized attention that the guests get there. So I do think that they have a winning model at this moment, and they've got an amazing management team that is great guys doing very good work. And they're in a very special part of South Africa.
Right.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, they do have the funding to have.
They've got great backers.
Yeah,
They've got really.
But they also use it in a good way, because they also look after their neighbors that can't afford the anti-poaching initiatives, and they do fly with the helicopter and they help. So I think, Elvia, the manager there, and his team is doing great work with the backing of the family that owns Tswalu. So I must say they really contributing to our area, and they are team players.
It's great to see, because I'm not going to say their name because they asked me not to, but we visited another operation that's doing very successful rhino conservation work, does conservation experience work, brings people in, they pay a lot of money for these conservation experiences. They've done a lot with a brand management perspective of the lodge itself, of the property, just like Tswalu has. And they're making it. They're surviving. They have a little bit more philanthropic donation grant work to keep things running, not purely ecotourism. But again, you look at that model, it can work. A Tswalu model can work, but how many of those can you replicate in South Africa for the volume of tourists that are coming to South Africa, do you think?
Robbie, I'm going to say something very controversial now, and I'm not sure if anyone thinks about that. What I'm going to say is not that I want to take the income of the people involved away, but in all of this that is happening, with all these programs of the dehorning, the notching, where luckily pro-conservation South African tourists come and spend their money to experience that. I don't think there's 10 cents out of the rand going to the landowner that don't sleep at night, that have all the risk. It's going to the operators. And with all the respect, the amazing wildlife vets, they're making the money, the helicopter pilot. It's all the things that is coming into the gate of that property and leaving the gate of the property that's cashing in. Yes, there's a positive outcome. At least we can pay the anti-poaching, and at least you get philanthropic donors.
But at the end of the day, what are you left with as a landowner?
That is the question, and that is something that...
And that's somehow taboo, right?
Yeah.
You've heard that from our side. There's people always... The finger that's always pointed at hunting is that, Wiaan, you're hunting a rhino because all that money's going in your back pocket.
Yeah.
That's how you're becoming rich.
Yeah. No, we're not hunting a rhino, we're killing one.
That but that like you're making, that's a huge amount of money. And we spoke with Wiaan, and Wiaan was like, I've got feed costs, I've got fence costs. Like you say, people coming in that you're paying to look after the rhino, the vet, you're paying, the helicopter person, you're paying, the fence people to fix the fence, you're paying, the people who come fix the road, you're paying, and then someone kills the rhino, and you've got this stack of debt that you pay down from the rhino hunt. And what are you left with?
I definitely think if we can ever have a model, like if those funds can go into a trust and you apply with your rhino budget, and the funding can look after that, because yes, people will, where there is money, people will abuse it. Where there's no money, people will abuse the system to get money. So money will always be an issue and a problem, but it is just that to make it worth it, and what can we do to make it worth it for the landowner to expand his land, because that's our biggest challenge. The market of rhinos is disappearing. So either you're going to expand your land...
Why is the market of rhinos disappearing?
Over legislation. We're living in a world where we have a disabling environment, not an enabling environment, with laws, bylaws, policies and everything. And I think the reason for that is people that's implementing that is too far away from reality. I don't think they mean it bad, but they don't understand. Like, we could always sell easily rhino to Namibia. It's not possible because of a new policy, not because of a new law. We can't export rhino to the many, many places in Texas that would love to have rhino. And where can you think about a more safe place than the United States for rhino, and to have...
What would you say to somebody who says that's the most asinine idea in the world? The rhinos don't belong in Texas; they belong in Africa.
Are we going to say that people belong only to a certain continent? I think we started maybe in one, but we went out as the need was there for that. I think we are more modern humans, that we can think something belongs to a certain place if it has the ability to produce, be protected and looked after. I don't think there's got a fixed address. Are we prepared to let the species get extinct because that's what we believe? I might differ from that.
Well, and the thing is, Texas takes 25 rhino, and like Vickers did, 48 rhino, and suddenly Texas has 500 rhino, and 250 come back every year from births back to South Africa and Namibia.
Robbie, isn't a more practical way to say, listen, we have an estimate of 8,000 rhinos in South Africa. We will allow a quota of 10% to be exported every 10 years. Are we harming ourselves, or are we making sure the species will survive? What's wrong with that? But just to stop it and say no, and because people are very, sometimes think that what they believe is the only way and the right way. And I think that then we get stuck in decisions like that. Because yes, you might believe that a rhino, as for me, I think a rhino without a horn is not a pretty animal. More because we're not used to it. But I can tell you, when I've dehorned all our cows, I had no people coming in on that side of the property. But I had people coming into the side where there were still horns on. So is it right to dehorn or is it wrong to dehorn? There's always some things, but you do things with a reason. And as long as you can justify your reason and it's making sense, then you must consider to listen to different opinions. And that's why I say, I don't think it's wrong to start a nucleus of a rhino population elsewhere. And there's different countries where people, obviously I don't think Europe was good for rhinos with their weather, but I do think it can work some other places, Australia, maybe America, even South America, although there it will be just as difficult to look after them as in Africa.
Correct.
Because we need a first world system to protect those animals.
You need the security, right? Security is paramount.
Definitely.
It's the number one thing for you guys.
Yeah.
Because poaching's the number one threat.
Yeah. And poaching, we can argue the same. Yes, but if you sell, you're feeding the market, you create a bigger market, poaching won't stop. But at least the money, some of that money is going to the right place. Let's enable each other to look after them and make sure you have a population that can be there for generations to come,
No, 100%. 100%. The other, you mentioned something else about dehorning, because you just said dehorning, and it's true, dehorning is, from a scientific perspective, proven as the greatest mitigation tool against poaching. Okay? Some have said, and it has happened, poachers go in, they find a dehorned rhino, they're gutful, and they shoot the rhino just because they're pissed off, right? They've spent all this time to try and get this rhino horn, and they're left with a nub. You mentioned something to me yesterday that you've dehorned a rhino to stop it killing other rhinos.
Yes, we do it a lot. If we have a problem child, especially a bull that is killing young bulls, then we will dehorn.
Oh, the only problem child in the rhino space you have is old male bulls, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you have too many in an area, so what we've experienced when we dehorn the whole herd, and I'm talking about over 200 animals. When we dehorned them, we lost really no babies, because not the cows was fighting, not the bulls. No one can hurt the baby. Now that we don't dehorn for a while and the horns have grown out, now suddenly we lose all this 2 to 3 year old young bulls, and we lose 8 to 15 because of there's horns. So in a fenced area where we are forced to do management, dehorning can be good for the rhino population. Definitely. First of all, yes, I agree with you. People come in at night and they might shoot sometimes a dehorned animal. But that percentage in the bigger picture is so low.
Way low.
So people like to use that, say, but they're anyways going to shoot them. Why don't we talk about the biggest bull, I nearly said bullshit, that to put poison in the horn, that happened, and how many people made money out of that? That didn't work, because if you take...
making the different color of the horn or different radioactivity of the horn, what do you think about all that?
I can tell you, we've seen it, that when you drill that hole, that horn is so dense that fluid can't go through the horn, so it's only that little piece. But the people bought it, into it, and they paid for that, because they don't want to deal on our rhino. That side I understand, but there were so many initiatives. I mean, our government said we'll never deal on because a rhino mum needs the horn to protect the baby, para, and to send the baby where it must go, and all that soppy
Nonsense.
stories. And at the end of the day, who's Dehorning now?
Parks.
Luckily they do, because that is really working. And I tell you now that there's so many things, but people, where there's a lot of emotion, you'll have a lot of nonsense going around as well, because there's uninformed people that is standing behind the podiums these days and want to save animals. It's not the landowners, because they don't have the time to do it, and they're not the best advocates of their own ideology. But we need to sit and say, listen, there's a space for all of us. We all want the same outcome. How are we going to achieve
What is that outcome?
I think the outcome is to make sure that the rhinos is there forever. I think that's the only outcome we want. And there's different means to achieve that. Do I want to be part of all the different means? I don't have to. If I don't want to dehorn and I want to pay more for protection, that's my choice. But understand why I'm not dehorning. If I dehorn, understand why I dehorn. If I'm pro-trade, understand why I'm pro-trade, because maybe I don't have philanthropic money behind me. I must create my own money.
Right.
As long as we don't kill the rhinos to make money out of them illegally. That is the point where we must get to. And people get confused about that.
We talked about misconceptions. You've given me one. Do you have another misconception that people have? I might just grease the skids a little bit. I think people would be very surprised that there is of the two rhino species, black and white, black would be more endangered, right?
Yes.
That there is a surplus right now of male black rhinos.
No, there's a huge surplus. And
which is counted to being endangered.
Yes. I want to go a step back. If you look at white rhinos, and I don't know why it is, but you get more males than females. The only reason why we, at this moment, I don't think have that same problem with black rhinos is because we are allowed with the right permits and all the things that you must do to get a permit to hunt a rhino, legally a white rhino.
White rhino, you just mixed it up with black and white, but white.
Yeah, white.
Yeah, white.
So that's why we don't have that
surplus issue.
But with the black rhino, we're really sitting where the mortality is rising at
When
this
last
moment.
did you hunt a black rhino?
I haven't hunted one on this property. It's only Namibia that's getting the permits, only 5 per year, and that's very difficult because everyone tried to go for it. Where in South Africa, I can tell you now that I know that Sandparks is selling a lot of bulls every year on auctions just to try to get rid of a couple of them. It's not successful.
Why are they getting rid of those bulls? Riaan, I think somebody's listening to this podcast and going, that makes no sense. Why are you selling these rhino? Why do you have to get rid of them?
I think there's two reasons, obviously, to meet the budget financially, and I think the second reason is because the bulls is killing all the offspring. Bulls is competing for territory. A black rhino bull is non-forgiving. If he's in an area and there's a youngster that came in there, he's not going to live with him, he will kill it. Point. We've lost 6 calves by 1 bull. It's extremely difficult to introduce a new bull because the bicornus subspecies that's here in Namibia, there's not so many of them available. But it is really a huge problem, and people ignore that. They rather just move the problem to a different property. They just move the bull to other properties.
If they have the space.
Yeah, and you need space. You really need space, and you need not just one space, because if you see there's a bull that's causing problem, you must be able to move it to a different area that's close by to get them out of the way.
And Wiaan, so I'm going to play a little hypothetical game. Assume you do not have the space to move that rhino. What can you do?
I can cut his horn as short as possible, and now he can't kill anyone else.
The black rhino.
But then he's going to get killed because he can't fight anymore. White rhino fight in confined spaces and when numbers is too high, definitely. But black rhino fight in any area if they meet up with each other. So it is a huge problem.
So you'd have to, if you decided to dehorn that black rhino, you'd have to dehorn all your bulls.
That's correct. That's the only way that you can go on with them. And you know what? To get a place to move that black rhino quickly is about impossible, because you will have to have a black rhino management document in place. There's so many loops that you must jump through.
So it's actually pretty difficult. If somebody wanted black rhino today to expand their range, to expand the habitat.
No, it's a lengthy process. If I say months to more than a year, then I think I'm very optimistic.
Wow. And you couldn't export them either, right? You couldn't export them to Namibia. You can't export them to Texas.
No, not at all.
None. That isn't even a quick. That's not even allowed.
Yeah. I mean, they stopped.
It's not a policy regulation.
We could always export 5 white rhino per year to a zoo registration facility in America.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also been taken away. So not even that is possible anymore.
And why was that taken away?
I just think that because of the declining numbers, our governments think they are doing well and they're protecting our national herd. But we must know, it's actually so funny, and this also counts for other species. When it suits government, private numbers is calculated into the national herd when they want to brag and when they want to go to CITES or the UN or whatever. But when we get legislation in place to support our sustainable use policy, then they only take the numbers in national parks, because they don't. Our numbers is, according to them, not scientifically counted.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything is then endangered on the red list, on tops, and you can't trade with them. So it's quite an unfair system. We have a private system and a national system. Laws look at them as a unit, but government look at that separately. Depends when it suits them best.
And you may know the percentage better than I do. What's the percentage of rhino in South Africa being held privately versus publicly? I've always used the 80-20, 80%, 20%.
80%
privately held.
I think we've been, if we look at 15 years ago, I think we were at about just the other way around, 80% government, 20% private. I would say we're now at the 70-30. 70-30 private, 30% government.
Okay.
I mean, we all know that Kruger's numbers, and I mean, they will obviously publicly disagree with me, but they're welcome to prove me wrong. I don't think they have 2,000 white rhino left on estimate numbers of 12 to 14,000 in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, in the Northern Cape, I don't think there were 20 years ago 100 white rhino, where we now, I think, 1,500 plus, all in private. Private. So most of our provincial reserves depopulate their rhino herds. First of poaching, some places were poached out totally, and then some moved them. I had at one stage rhino here from the government when they were poaching too much, and we moved them back to sandbox. But so it's not that it may sound that I'm very negative about it, but we still help each other, because
of course
there's a bigger picture behind it. But that doesn't mean I can't disagree totally with the management system.
But the potential for the private 70% to do what Ian Player did in the 60s and 70s, to resurrect the public resource of rhinos, is potentially there.
Oh yes.
But the policies are handcuffing you, essentially.
I tell you now, the rhinos is one of the species that I really think people are crazy to invest in that. Because why would you want something on your property? First of all, that's a safety risk. Secondly, people with no vested interest is going to tell you how you can deal and trade with it. And you are actually really handcuffed to deal with what you have at hands. And there's a huge opportunity for the species, for the owner, actually. When I bought my first heifers, I paid for a heifer then 300 or 350,000 rand. There was one stage we bought a cow and a calf for 650 to 800,000 rand.
Wow.
Now I can buy cows for 80,000 rand.
Wow.
There's even people that say if you take them away and
You
you
can
look
have
after
them for free.
you can have them for free. If we think that is how we measure success, then there's something wrong with us.
Yeah, it's an economic. It's a. At the end of the day, and this is the hardest people for people who, they love rhinos, they love rhino conservation, but when you start talking about economics, they're like, no, you can't. You're denigrating a rhino to just money.
Yeah. But to give it a zero value is not degrading it. Isn't that way worse? I mean, you know what? And it's not all these things. And I mean, we still use it. About sustainable use. If it pays, it stays. And it's not about that. It's not about that.
But you've been telling me, and here's the other thing that Wiaan said to me, is rhinos actually do not follow that phrase. If it pays, it stays.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, right? Rhinos do not follow that model.
No, you don't want...
Because, like where we're going to go, Kalahari Oryx, their estimated anti-poaching bill a month is $70,000.
Yeah. How the hell can you justify that? There's no way. If there's not money, you know what? And there's nothing wrong for the money flowing from outside into that.
To protect it. But
let's at least justify that investment. What if that investor or that fund is drying up? What are we sitting then? Then we sit with a crisis. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable if a bucket's got a hole in. The water is going to dry up one day. You can't keep on filling it up. That's why I say we have the ability to make it a sustainable system with your choice where you want to participate in it and where's your role that you can play, but we will have the same outcome. And that's to secure the future of rhinos, not just for us, for everyone after that, for everyone with an opinion. But people doesn't make it possible.
So to you, the legalization of the horn trade is not the be all and end all. It's not the silver bullet.
No. If it's there, within those parameters, you can decide if you want to participate or not. That's that. You're not forced to. You can decide, listen, I'm going to have a small population of my rhinos that I will deal on to sustain the others. Some people will say, listen, for me, it's a commercial decision, but as long as the rhinos get better within the laws, he will be able to do it. There will be someone like Vickers who's got a conservation model on the one side and then the captive breeding operation on the other side where this one is funding the other one. I think it can accommodate from the sabi who's just photographic and people that will never kill each thing or like a Dehorning.
But even a sabi, right? Again, we're here doing this documentary and I've thought long and hard and I've poked and prodded and I've put my thought into like dark corners that people I don't think have actually thought through. Like to me, the legalization of the horn trade, I think will benefit everyone. And I think that there's going to be a gradated scale of the value of a rhino horn, okay? So for me, in my brain, the very first cut of a rhino horn would probably be the most valuable because it's intact, right? And it's like a diamond. Color grades, carats, size, weight, that's all going to play into this, what the value is of this rhino horn. You know, a 2-year-old cut or a 3-year-old cut, that's going to have a certain value because it's already been cut. A full rhino horn of a hunted rhino will have a high premium, right? And similarly, for a sabi, that rhino is never going to live forever. Okay, it's going to die one day. And when it dies one day, there's a full, massive rhino horn that then can be used, that has the greatest value. Have you even thought this way?
No, but it makes absolute sense.
This has now the greatest value. And where does that rhino horn now go? That rhino died, natural death. How great would it be for rhino conservation if that dead rhino, natural death, lived its life? That horn then now is put and traded, generates 5 million rand, 10 million rand, whatever it is at the time. Maybe the prices have been depressed, but I don't think the prices will be depressed on these intact large horns. I think you'd get premium pricing. And that would then fund the next 5 years of anti-poaching at Sabi Sabi.
This is exactly what you're saying, you know. Let's say our parks sit on a stockpile that they can use to fund the operations after all this floods. Then they don't have to go and stand and begging for donors that dictate for them how they must run their show.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own resources to do that. If we talk about, let's say, look at elephant, it's impossible to think that we must take ivory trade and rhino horn trade in the same sentence, because an elephant must die to get his ivory. A rhino, yes, he can die of old age, and then it's amazing. It will be amazing if it could be like that.
Yeah.
But a rhino doesn't have necessarily to die. And you know, a rhino male, I think if I'm right, and Vikas will know better, is that I think a rhino bull will produce 60 kilograms of horns in his lifetime if you cut it at the 6-year-old and harvest it. If you look at that ability to generate funds to look after those rhinos and to justify your operations and justify your ownership of rhinos, then it's actually...
Do you think you'd have more rhino owners?
100%. People will fight to have rhinos, but you know what's the best? A live rhino will have a value.
Mm-hmm. All of a sudden.
All of a sudden, because it is like that. No one wants something with no value. That is the way it is.
Mm.
But we've devalued rhino
to a point where you're like, people are giving them away for free.
To a point that it is sad to see that, really.
Yeah. It's again, like you start pulling at fibers and threads of this whole rhino conservation debate and the horn debate and whatnot. I don't think anybody has fully explored it. I think there's the economic models, obviously, that are driving something. I think that from the anti-side, there is they worry about the farming element. They also worry about the illegal spike going up through the roof, and maybe that'll occur. We just don't know, right? Nobody can say yes or no, but we do know there'll be more money in the system to protect rhinos. It's not like it's, when they always compare it to an elephant ivory sell-off, right?
Yeah.
And so when I hear that, I'm like, well, it's really comparing apples and oranges. When they say, well, when they sell the stockpile of elephants, there's an increase in instance of illegal ivory coming into the system and elephant poaching. I said, well, but the money being sold in that stockpile isn't going to you, the private owner, to then protect more rhinos. It's an apple and oranges scenario.
But for me, it's easy. When we sold our elephant stockpile, 20 years ago, my question is, did our elephant population increase or decrease? There's 40% more elephant. That is the question. We don't allow the rhino trade, but we allow rhinos to be killed for their horn on the illegal market. There's no taxes coming into the country. We can get to all that debate that I don't want to get into, because that's not about that. We get into so much detail of the spin-offs of this possibility that we get lost and we don't address the problem. The problem is that rhino doesn't have a value. We can give them a value, and it can still be the choice of the rhino owner where you want to participate in this chain. And I don't believe if we are big enough to make a decision to say, listen, we will give it a go and we will measure it scientifically, and after 3 years we will sit around the table and say, did it work or not, and then recall our decision, then we are big enough. But we are not big enough to make that decision because we are so scared it's not fitting the ideology of some people, and I think that's where we are wrong.
Yeah, well said. Well, we've got a day and a half in front of us to explore all of this more and dig deeper and
to understand how silly we all are to have rhinos.
But you love your rhinos.
Yeah,
you love your rhinos more than your buffalo, you told me.
I love my wife as well, and marriage is not easy.
So rhino conservation is not for everyone, is what you're saying?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. I think if you financially driven, then it's definitely not for you. If you can't be passionate about it and justify your silliness, then stay out of it until things change.
final point for you, you holding rhinos, you keeping rhinos, you being the custodians of rhino is not a financial winning strategy.
No, no, definitely not. It is, I make it make sense through the bulls that I'm hunting. If I have the choice and there's another option, I'll sign that I will stop rhino hunting tomorrow. Not because I think hunting is wrong, but I just think I can do something else with those bulls and send them to places where people want to look after them, take pictures. I think there's place for everything, but I don't want to be forced that that's my only option. That's actually my problem that I have with it. I'm forced to hunt bulls to pay for themselves, where there is other options that I can follow if we are allowed.
Well said. Thanks, Wiaan.
Good.